In the quiet rolling hills of Northumberland, where morning mist clung to heather and ancient stone walls whispered of forgotten centuries, stood Rosemere Hall, grand, imposing, magnificent, and unbearably silent. Its windows reflected sunsets of molten gold, its halls echoed with polished footsteps, its name commanded respect across counties. But within those towering walls lived a man untouched by warmth, Duke Adrian Wycliffe, 29 years of age, master of Rosemere. He possessed wealth, he possessed land, he possessed a title older than some kingdoms, but he did not possess joy, the weight of expectation. Fire crackling softly, a grandfather clock ticking. Adrian stood before the massive portrait of his late father. The former duke's painted eyes were stern even in death. A final conversation echoed in his memory. Father's voice, low, firm. "A duke must never stand alone, Adrian. Marriage is not about desire, it is about legacy." Adrian's jaw tightened. His father had never spoken of love, only duty, only continuation, only lineage. And now that burden rested squarely upon his shoulders. 3 days from now, he would meet his arranged bride, a woman selected for compatibility of estates, a woman chosen by negotiation, a woman he had never spoken to. He exhaled slowly. "I will not be cruel to her," he murmured to the empty room. But kindness was not love, and he did not know if he was capable of love. Scene 2, the only companions he trusted. Stable sounds, horses shifting, soft knickers. Adrian preferred the stables to the ballroom, the scent of hay, the warmth of breath in cold air, the honesty of animals. His estate manager, Mr. Hawthorne, approached cautiously. "Your Grace, the Ashbourne carriage is expected on Thursday." Adrian nodded absently, stroking the neck of his black stallion, Orion. "Ensure the guest chambers are prepared." "They are already immaculate." Of course they were. Rosemere excelled in appearance. Hawthorne hesitated. "If I may, Your Grace, Lady Clara Ashbourne is said to be unconventional." Adrian's brow lifted slightly. "In what manner?" "She has been known to nurse injured livestock herself, even stray dogs." Adrian paused. "That was unexpected. Is that so?" "Yes, Your Grace." He returned his attention to Orion. "Then perhaps she will find Rosemere less dreadful than I do." The arrival. Distant carriage wheels over gravel, horses slowing. Thursday arrived cloaked in silver morning light. Adrian stood upon the stone steps of Rosemere Hall, his posture perfect, his expression neutral. The carriage doors opened, but the bride did not step out immediately. Instead, a soft voice, a whisper. Adrian leaned forward slightly. Lady Clara Ashbourne was speaking gently to the 2 white horses. Her gloved hands stroked their manes. The restless animals, fatigued from travel, gradually stilled. The coachman blinked in surprise. Adrian felt something unfamiliar stir. Curiosity. She finally stepped down, not dramatically, not nervously, simply present. Her eyes were bright, not calculating, not timid, curious, alive. She offered a graceful bow. "Your Grace." But before he could respond, her gaze shifted to the limping estate hound nesting near the fountain. Without hesitation, she gathered her skirts and knelt on stone. "Oh, sweetheart." She examined the paw carefully. Adrian stared. Most noblewomen recoiled from mud. This one embraced it. And Rosemere Hall, for the first time in years, felt slightly less cold. An unusual first impression. Inside the great hall, introductions were made. Her aunt, Lady Winthrop, spoke endlessly of propriety and alliances. Clara spoke little, but she observed everything: the servants, the tapestries, the draught beneath the doors. "You keep falcons?" she asked suddenly. Adrian blinked. "Yes." "I heard one." He almost smiled. "You have sharp ears." She tilted her head slightly. "Animals speak. Most people do not listen." He studied her carefully. This was not rehearsed charm. It was conviction. The first dinner. Cutlery against fine china, distant thunder rumbling. Dinner was formal, silverware aligned, candles steady, silence heavy, until a bark echoed faintly through the courtyard. Clara's head turned instantly. "That is not playful," she said softly. Adrian's fork paused mid-air. "You can distinguish it?" "Yes." She met his eyes directly now. "That is worry." He had never met a woman who spoke with such certainty, without mockery, without embarrassment. He stood. "Would you care to investigate?" A small smile touched her lips. "I would." And so the Duke abandoned protocol for the first time in years. The mare in the storm. Wind rising, stable doors rattling. A young mare trembled violently, thunder frightening her. The stable boy struggled. Clara approached slowly, her voice lowered into soft reassurance. Adrian watched the transformation. The horse's frantic breathing slowed, her trembling eased. Without thinking, Adrian stepped beside Clara, placing his steady hand along the mare's neck. The animal stilled entirely. Clara looked up at him in quiet surprise. "You have the touch." He answered honestly, "I prefer animals to people." She laughed softly. "So do I." And in that moment, something shifted, not dramatically, but undeniably. The first crack in a very old wall. A private reflection. Later that night, Adrian stood alone in his study, but his thoughts were not on estate finances or political alliances. They were on a woman kneeling in mud without hesitation, on hands unafraid of dirt, on eyes that saw creatures others overlooked. He had expected a stranger. He had expected obligation. He had not expected warmth. And for the first time since the arrangement was announced, he did not feel trapped. He felt uncertain. And uncertainty, he realized, was not always unpleasant. Thus began the most unexpected chapter in the life of Duke Adrian Wycliffe, not with fireworks, not with grand declarations, but with a whispered conversation between a woman and two weary horses. And sometimes that is how love enters. Mornings in the stables. Dawn at Rosemere. Morning at Rosemere Hall did not begin with servants. It began with mist. Silver mist stretching across the hills of Northumberland, wrapping the paddocks in quiet secrecy. And on the third morning after Lady Clara's arrival, Duke Adrian rose before sunrise. He told himself it was habit. He did not admit it was anticipation. He walked toward the stables, and there she was, already there, hair loosely pinned, sleeves slightly rolled, speaking softly to a chestnut mare as she brushed its coat. "You rise early, Your Grace," she said without turning. He paused. "How did you know it was me?" She smiled faintly. "Your steps are measured. The stable boys shuffle." He almost laughed. "Almost. You seem quite at home here." "I am." She handed him a brush. "Would you care to assist?" No Duchess-in-waiting had ever handed him stable equipment before. He took it, and something unspoken passed between them. Shared childhoods. As golden light filtered through the stable doors, conversation flowed more freely than it had at dinner. "I was not raised for ballrooms," Clara admitted quietly. "My father preferred fields to banquets. He allowed me to follow the shepherds." Adrian listened. "I once hid in the kennels during my own birthday celebration." Clara looked at him in surprise. "Truly?" I hid because I disliked being inspected. She smiled knowingly. So did I. There was a long pause, comfortable. I had a wounded hawk when I was 12, Clara continued quietly. They told me it would not survive. And did it? It did. She met his gaze directly now. I refused to let it die simply because it was inconvenient. Adrian felt that sentence more deeply than she realized. He had been raised to believe inconvenience was weakness, and yet here she stood, strong in gentleness. The falcon. Later that morning, Adrian brought her to the eastern tower. A falcon perched on a leather stand near the window, its feathers dark and proud. "This is Ares," Adrian said. "I found him with a broken wing." Clara approached slowly. No fear, no forced bravery, just respect. "You healed him." "Yes."
Then he stayed. Adrian nodded. He could have flown anywhere. Clara looked at him thoughtfully. Creatures remain where they feel safe. Her words lingered longer than intended. He wondered, did she feel safe here? A watchful eye. Not everyone at Rosemere approved of this informality. Lady Winthrop observed from the window that afternoon, her expression sharp. "A future duchess does not belong in stables," she muttered. Mr. Hawthorne cleared his throat. "With respect, my lady, the Duke seems different." "Different how?" "He laughs." Lady Winthrop fell silent. That, perhaps, was the most concerning detail of all. The village visit. Clara surprised Adrian again 2 days later. "Would you ride with me?" she asked. "To where?" "To the village." He hesitated. Dukes did not simply ride into villages unannounced, but something about her tone was impossible to refuse. They rode side by side through winding paths. Children paused to stare. An elderly farmer tipped his cap. Clara dismounted without ceremony beside a small cottage. Inside, a frail sheepdog lay resting. "He is old," the farmer said sadly, "and I cannot afford a physician." Clara knelt immediately. Adrian watched her examine the animal gently, speaking softly. Then she looked at him. "We can help." It was not a question. He studied the dog, then the farmer, then her. "Yes," he said simply. And in that moment, a decision was made that would echo for years. The beginning of change. Within a week, Adrian had ordered funds allocated for veterinary aid in nearby villages. Mr. Hawthorne blinked in astonishment. "For livestock, Your Grace?" "For life," he corrected quietly. Word spread quickly. The Duke was changing, and Clara never once demanded it. She merely existed and inspired it. The question of love. That evening, beneath an amber sky, they walked the western fields. Golden retrievers bounded ahead through tall grass. "Do you believe," Clara asked suddenly, "that affection can grow where it was not planted?" He considered carefully. "I believe respect can." "And is that enough?" "For a stable marriage," he replied cautiously. She stopped walking. "I do not wish for stability alone." Her voice trembled slightly now. "I wish for partnership." He looked at her properly. The fading sun lit her face in soft gold. "I do not know how to be what you deserve," he admitted quietly. She stepped closer. "Do you care to learn?" The question settled between them. Heavy, hopeful. He swallowed. "Yes." And that was the first honest promise he had made to her. The letter. But peace does not last untouched. 2 days later, a letter arrived, sealed in dark wax, from Lord Beaumont, a neighboring nobleman and former suitor of Lady Clara Ashbourne. Adrian read the contents once, then twice. It was polite, but pointed. It implied Clara's family had chosen wealth over affection. It implied she had once nearly accepted Beaumont's proposal, and worst of all, it implied she had been happy. A slow, unfamiliar emotion tightened in Adrian's chest. Jealousy. He folded the letter carefully, but something inside him had shifted again. Not open this time. Closed. Distance. The next morning, in the stables, he was quieter, more reserved. Clara noticed immediately. "You seem troubled." "I am merely occupied." "With estate matters?" "Yes." She studied him. He would not meet her eyes. The distance was subtle, but undeniable, and she felt it. For the first time since arriving at Rosemere, Clara felt uncertainty. The watchful fear. That night, rain tapped against tall windows. Clara stood alone in the guest chamber. Perhaps she had misread him. Perhaps warmth did not mean permanence. Perhaps she had allowed herself to hope too soon. Meanwhile, Adrian stood in his study once more, the letter from Beaumont resting on his desk. He realized something deeply unsettling. The thought of her loving another man hurt, and he had not expected to be vulnerable. He had not expected to care enough for it to matter, and that frightened him more than the arranged marriage ever had. Love does not always arrive with certainty. Sometimes it arrives with fear, with doubt, with jealousy that reveals truths pride would rather hide. The Duke, who believed himself incapable of feeling, was beginning to feel far too much, and neither of them yet understood that the true test of their bond was not gentleness, but honesty. Distance is rarely loud. It creeps. It settles in glances not returned, in pauses stretched a little too long. For 3 days, Adrian remained courteous, measured, distant. Clara felt it like a draft beneath a closed door. On the 4th evening, she found him in the western gallery staring at the darkening horizon. "You are avoiding me," she said gently. "I am not." "You are." He inhaled slowly. "There are matters you did not mention." Her brows furrowed. "What matters?" He turned then. Lord Beaumont. The name fell between them like a stone. Clara blinked once. "Beaumont? He wrote to me." Silence. "He implied," Adrian continued carefully, "that you were prepared to accept his proposal." Clara's expression shifted, not guilt, hurt. "Yes," she said honestly, "he did propose. And I declined." The wind outside howled faintly. "You declined?" "Yes." "Why?" She stepped closer. "Because he loved possession." Her voice was steady now, not partnership. Adrian felt the sharp sting of shame. "You might have loved him." "No," she said firmly. "I respected him. That is not the same." A long silence followed. "Why does it matter to you?" she asked softly. And there it was, the question he had been avoiding. His jaw tightened. "It should not." "But it does." His voice lowered. "Yes." The confession trembled between them. "Why?" she whispered. He struggled for the words. "Because the thought of you belonging elsewhere," his voice faltered, "is intolerable." Clara's breath caught. "But you pull away from me." "Because I do not know how to want something I was told was merely duty." The truth was raw, unpolished, honest. She reached for his hand. "Then stop thinking of it as duty." Thunder cracked across the sky, and the storm began. Chaos in the paddock. Lightning tore through the darkness. Rain lashed against the windows. A stable boy burst into the hall. "Your Grace, the paddock gate has broken loose." Without hesitation, Clara turned toward the door. "Clara," Adrian began, but she was already moving. They ran through sheets of rain. Horses screamed in panic. The young mare from weeks before reared violently against broken fencing. Clara moved toward her instinctively. "Easy, easy." "Stay back," Adrian shouted. The horse's hooves struck dangerously close. Clara slipped in the mud. Adrian lunged forward, pulling her against his own as the horse's hoof crashed down where she had stood. For one suspended second, everything froze. Rain, breath, fear.
He held her tightly, shielding her body with his own as he steadied the mare with firm commands. The animal slowly calmed. The stable boys secured the gate, but Adrian did not release her. "Do not ever run toward danger like that again," he said hoarsely. Her hands trembled slightly. "Someone had to. I will not lose you." The words escaped before he could restrain them. They both went still. The rain softened. Clara searched his face. "You would not lose me," she whispered. "Not unless you push me away." His defenses, carefully built over decades, finally broke. "I am afraid," he admitted quietly. "Of what?" "Of loving you and failing you." She stepped closer despite the rain. "You cannot fail at love by trying." Lightning flashed again, but this time it felt distant. He lifted her face gently. "This marriage was arranged," he said, voice unsteady, "but my feelings are not." Her eyes filled, not tears of sadness, but relief. "Nor are mine," she breathed, and beneath the storm-torn sky of Northumberland, they kissed. Not dramatically, not urgently, but with the quiet certainty of two souls who had finally chosen each other.
The wedding and the warmth. A different kind of ceremony. The wedding took place 3 weeks later. Not rushed, not delayed. Chosen. The chapel at Rosemere Hall glowed with candlelight. Clara wore ivory silk, simple and elegant. At her collar rested a small brooch shaped like a dove. Adrian waited at the altar, no longer stiff, no longer distant, present. When the chapel doors opened, 2 golden retrievers padded happily down the aisle before the bride. A ripple of laughter spread through the guests. Lady Winthrop nearly fainted. Adrian smiled, truly smiled, and did not scold a single bark. The falcon Ares perched quietly above the rafters. Even he seemed to understand the moment. When their vows were spoken, they were not elaborate, they were honest. "I promise partnership," Adrian said. "I promise truth," Clara replied. "And I promise to listen," she added softly. He squeezed her hands. "I promise to learn." And as they sealed their vows, a dog barked happily in approval. The Duke laughed, and the silence that once haunted Rosemere was gone. Years of change. Time passed not in grand gestures, but in small, consistent kindness. Together they established animal shelters across Northumberland. They funded veterinary training for village youth. They opened Rosemere's lands for community grazing during harsh winters. Clara walked among villagers without pretense. Adrian listened more than he commanded. Mr. Hawthorne often remarked quietly, "The Duke is no longer feared, he is respected," and more surprisingly, loved. A quiet evening. Years later, the sun dipped low across golden fields. Sheep grazed peacefully. Dogs rested near the hearth. Clara sat beside Adrian on the terrace, her hand still fitting perfectly in his. "Do you regret it?" she asked softly. "The arrangement?" "Yes." He considered the hills stretching endlessly before them. "No." "Why?" "Because it brought you here." She smiled. "Perhaps our marriage was arranged." He nodded slowly. "But love," she finished gently, "was entirely our own." He kissed her temple. The once lonely Duke had become something far greater than powerful. He had become warm. And Rosemere Hall, once silent stone and echo, now carried laughter in its corridors, the sound of paws against polished floors, the steady rhythm of 2 hearts that chose each other again and again. In the end, he did not learn to love through obligation. He learned through listening, through patience, through courage, and through a woman who understood the language of creatures and the quiet fears of men who had forgotten how to feel. And in the hills of Northumberland, where mist still rolls at dawn,
They say Rosemere Hall no longer stands in silence. It breathes, with loyalty, with compassion, with love.